it reaches the muscles through the motor tracts. Okay, and the movement of muscles involves the action of cerebral cortex, then control and coordination by basal ganglia, cerebellum, midbrain, etc. Various parts of the brain. It is a complex mechanism, and it depends the various parts or the participation of various parts of the brain depends on the type of movement being carried out. Okay, so this tract is about the complete, or it is not about the precise type or precise movements, but a generalized part of how the movements or how the muscles are being contracted. Okay, it's just a generalized mechanism, and the action or the participation of basal ganglia and cerebellum we'll discuss in that portions. Okay, so motor system or the motor tracts controls the activities of skeletal muscles of our body. This motor tract, both the tracts which we are going to study, it mainly controls the skeletal muscles, and it's not controlling the smooth and the cardiac muscles, that they are being controlled entirely or entirely different. Okay, these the spine, this one pyramidal or the extrapyramidal tracts, they are not in, extrapyramidal is, to some extent, but pyramidal tracts are completely in control of the activities of skeletal muscles in our body, not the smooth and cardiac muscles. Now, there are various types of motor activities are brought about by the skeletal muscles. Okay, many types of motor activities are being carried out, and those activities are execution of smooth, precise, and accurately voluntary movements. We know that skeletal muscles are voluntary muscles in our body, which can be moved according to our will and wish, right? Skeletal muscles. Then smooth muscles, they are seen lining the internal organs, and we don't have, or we can't voluntarily control the smooth muscles. And likewise, even the cardiac muscles also. Cardiac muscles are seen in the heart, and we can't control the contraction and relaxation of cardiac muscles also. So here, skeletal muscles mainly are concerned with voluntary movements. So the motor activities brought about by skeletal muscles are execution of smooth, precise, and accurately voluntary movements. Then coordination of movements responsible for skilled movements. Skilled movements means certain what, like a car driving or something like that. Skilled movements, which are trained movements, to be more specific. Then coordination of movements responsible for maintenance of posture and equilibrium. If a person suffering from cerebellar disease, or if a person has got some damage to the cerebellum, he'll not have the ability to move straight, or he'll not have the ability to walk just like we do. He'll move in a drunken manner, or like drunken people walk. It'll be they'll be shaking, or they'll be moving from one side to the other. It's called the drunken gait, which is seen mostly in cerebellar disease or cerebellar ataxia. So it is related to cerebellum, but still, what I'm meaning to say is that the coordination of movements, especially related to our posture and equilibrium, everything is being controlled, or everything is under the activity of skeletal muscles. So these are the various motor activities carried out by the skeletal muscles. And the motor tracts in charge of these muscles, they control and coordinate, or they have the controlling power on all these activities being carried out in our body. That's what we are going to study. Then voluntary actions and postural movements are carried out, controlled and coordinated by different parts of nervous system, which is together called the motor system. That's what I told you previously. And it includes the spinal cord and its nerves, cranial nerves, brainstem, cerebral cortex, cerebellum, and basal ganglia. So these are the parts, or these are the areas involved in the control and coordination of the voluntary actions and postural movements in our body. Everything related to skeletal muscles are being controlled by these parts of the brain, or these parts of the nervous system. Okay. Then the neuronal connections between these parts of the nervous system, which are responsible for motor activities, are called motor pathways. So it is what we are going to study, that is the motor pathways. And motor pathways, the main or the origin of motor pathways, or they arise from the primary motor cortex in the cerebral cortex. Just like somatosensory cortex or somatosensory area in our brain, there is another part called the primary motor area that is in charge of all the motor activities taking place in our body. And it also gets the information from premotor area, then association motor area or supplementary motor area, and also from somatosensory area. So the nerves arise from this primary motor cortex, and then it passes to various parts. I will discuss about that. So I hope you know what are the motor tracts or the descending pathways. You know the names, right? You know what they are?
Tectospinal Tract, Spinal Tract,
Okay, they are they.
Vestibulospinal Tract, Pyramidal Tract,
Okay, yes. The motor tracts or the descending tracts are divided into two, or they are of two types.
Pyramidal, extrapyramidal.
Exactly, pyramidal tracts and extrapyramidal tracts. Pyramidal tracts, they are mainly in control of the skeletal muscles in the lower parts of the body. Lower parts means just below the neck region. And extrapyramidal tracts is more related to the facial movements, or it is something related to the upper part, head and neck regions. Okay. The lower parts of the body, or the areas below the neck region, is being controlled by the pyramidal tracts. So, first about pyramidal tracts. Then pyramidal tracts, it is mainly of two types. One is corticospinal tract, and the other one is corticobulbar tract. Corticospinal and corticobulbar tract. Corticospinal tract is in turn again divided into two, as anterior corticospinal tract and lateral corticospinal tract. Okay, anterior corticospinal and lateral corticospinal. The corticospinal tract is divided into two, and corticobulbar tract. Now, from these two terms, you can just identify, or from these two terms, you can distinguish them. What is or where they are going. Corticospinal means the nerves or the neurons arise from the cerebral cortex, and they have connection, or they send the information, or they send the nerves to the
Pyramidal
spinal
tracts
cord.
has anterior and lateral corticospinal tracts.
No, no. First one, pyramidal tracts, it is of two. Actually, I didn't mention the other one. It is of two types, that is corticospinal tract and corticobulbar tract. BULBAR. Corticospinal and corticobulbar tract. Corticospinal is again divided into two, as anterior corticospinal tract and lateral corticospinal tract. Clear? Did you get the point?
Yeah.
Okay. So corticospinal tract, the neurons arise, or the nerves arise from the cortex, cerebral cortex, and they pass into the spinal cord, or they end in the spinal cord. We can see like that. They'll end or they'll pass through the spinal cord. But corticobulbar tracts means the nerves arise from the cerebral cortex, and they'll end in cranial nerve nuclei in the brainstem. That is the difference. Corticospinal, the nerves arise from cerebral cortex and they'll pass or end in the spinal cord. Whereas corticobulbar tracts, the nerves arise from the cerebral cortex and they'll end or they'll pass the information to the neurons seen in the cranial nerve nuclei. That is mainly in the brainstem. Okay, that's the difference. So we'll move into detail about this corticospinal tract. Now, they are called pyramidal tract because pyramidal tract, they assume the shape of a pyramid or inverted pyramid. That's why it is called a pyramidal tract. So the nerves or the neurons that carry the response for the sensations or for the information received in the somatosensory cortex, the nerves will carry those information from the motor area of the cerebral cortex. It will start from the motor area of cerebral cortex. This is the part. So it will start from the motor area of cerebral cortex, and it's like a fan, or it's fan like in the initial part, and that is called corona radiator. This part is called corona radiator. They'll converge together. That is, in the motor area is a wide area, so it will spread to the entire through the entire area of the motor cortex, and from there all these nerves will converge together, and they'll pass through the internal capsule. And where is the internal capsule seen?
Internal capsule is between the basal ganglia, between the caudate and the lentiform nuclei.
Caudate and
Lentiform nuclei.
exactly. That is in between caudate and the putamen, or caudate and the globus pallidus part. Okay. So the corona radiator, they'll converge together and they'll pass through the internal internal capsule, and finally they'll reach the medulla. Okay. The nerves, they'll come as such and they'll reach the medulla. When they reach the medulla, now you can see the picture, that is, they have converged and they'll form a pyramid shaped structure, or a small triangular, inverted triangular shaped structure over here in the medulla portion. So when they reach the medulla, these nerves will take a turn. That is, almost 80% of the nerves will cross to the opposite side. Okay, the nerves that have come from one side, for example, if you are concentrating on the right side, the nerves from the right side, the corona radiator, they'll converge together, pass through the right internal capsule, and finally reach the medulla. When they reach the medulla, 80% of the nerves will cross to the opposite side, whereas the uncrossed 20% will pass through the same side. So when they cross over, they form a small chiasmatic area, or a crossing area, which is called decussation of pyramids. This part is called decussation of pyramids. Here. Okay. So the nerves, after coming, or upon coming to the medulla portion, 80% of the nerves will cross to the opposite side, and 20% will remain uncrossed, and they will pass through the same side. The nerves, or the neurons that pass to the opposite side, form the lateral corticospinal tract, or cerebrospinal fasciculus, or cerebrospinal tract, whatever we can say. So the crossed ones form the lateral corticospinal tract, and the uncrossed one forms the anterior corticospinal tract. Is it clear till now? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cross ones form anterior.
Crossed ones form
lateral.
Lateral.
And
crossed one forms lateral.
There are 80% of them are lateral.
Yes, 80% are lateral and 20% remain uncrossed, and they are anterior.
Spinothalamic.
No, cerebrospinal. Cerebro or corticospinal tract.
Corticospinal.
Yeah, it is called cerebrospinal or corticospinal tract. We can term in either way. Okay. So the crossed one, they form lateral corticospinal tract. That means they pass through the lateral funiculus of the spinal cord, whereas the anterior corticospinal tract will pass through the anterior funiculus of the spinal cord. Till now, the neurons have not ended, or they haven't formed synapse with any other neurons. It is all the same that is coming from the cerebral cortex, or the motor area of cerebral cortex. Okay, they are the same nerves that are that started from here. So they come to the medulla, and in the medulla, 80% of those nerves will cross to the opposite side, and 20% will remain uncrossed. The crossed ones, they'll pass through the lateral funiculus and forms the lateral corticospinal tract, and the uncrossed ones pass through the anterior funiculus and forms the anterior corticospinal tract. And depending upon the section, or depending upon the segment in which they have to come to an end, or in which they have to end their pathway. So when they reach that particular segment, for example, if the movement of our left hand is to take place, or is it's necessary, at that time the nerves that the peripheral nerves, or the nerves that control the muscles of the left arm or left hand, and it will be arising from a particular section of the, or particular segment of the spinal cord. So what happens is, these nerves, they'll come to that particular segment or particular section of the spinal cord, and they will end there. But before ending, a small thing will happen, and that is, I'll just draw and show you here. Please wait. Sorry. Yeah. So firstly, I'm drawing the structure of spinal cord. Okay. Then this forms the gray matter part. Okay. Now, here we have two groups. One is the anterior, this one, crossed, the uncrossed ones that come just like this, and they reach the anterior funiculus. And the crossed ones, okay, I'll do one thing. I'll draw on the same side itself. Okay. So the crossed ones, that is coming along with these. Yes. Along with this, they'll cross and they'll pass through the lateral funiculus. Okay. So the black one represents the anterior corticospinal tract, and the green one represents the lateral corticospinal tract. Now, this one is 80% and this one is 20%. Anyway, these two groups, or these two nerves, started from the same point in the motor cortex, right? So they are to supply, or they are to inform the corresponding muscles. So what happens? They were a group, but now they have separated. And what happens is, when they reach the lateral corticospinal tract, when it comes here in the lateral part of the funiculus, or lateral funiculus part, they'll just move on to the anterior horn. They'll end in the anterior horn of the spinal cord. In which segment it is going to end? Okay, whatever be the area, or whichever be the limb it is controlling. Anyway, the lateral corticospinal tract, it will end in the anterior horn of that side. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. And about the other one, about the black one, it didn't cross in the medulla, and it came all the way on the same side. And we know that all the neurons, or all the nerves, they'll definitely cross to the opposite side. Either it comes from the lower parts, either it comes to the brain, or it comes from the brain. Whatever be the thing, it will definitely cross in a particular area. So the black ones, or the anterior corticospinal tract, they haven't crossed till now. And what happens is, when they reach that particular segment, they, from the anterior funiculus of that side, they'll cross to the opposite side and join with the other part, or join with the 80%, remaining 80%, which had crossed already in the medulla. And these two nerves, or these two groups, will end in the anterior horn of the spinal cord. Next, what happens is, the next group of neurons, the next group of these two neurons, or these two nerves, will pass their information to the next group of neurons, and those neurons will carry the information to the muscles. Is it clear? Yes or no?
The second group of neurons, right?
Yes, second group of neurons. Till now, that is till this part, it was the first group of neurons or first order neurons, we can say. And these neurons will end in the anterior horn of spinal cord. And from there, they'll pass the information to the next group of neurons or the second group of neurons, which carry the information to the muscles. That is to the skeletal muscles. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, these group of neurons, this one, that is the neurons coming from the the neurons that started from here, that is that started from the brain and ending in the spinal cord. They are called upper motor neurons.
Neurons that start in the brain and end in?
Ended in the spinal cord, end in the spinal cord. Neurons that start at the brain, that is the primary, this one, motor area of cerebral cortex, and end in the spinal cord are called upper motor neurons. And the neurons that carry information from the upper motor neurons to the muscles, okay, they are called lower motor neurons. Lower motor neurons. Clear? Okay. So neurons that arise from the brain and end in the spinal cord are called upper motor neurons, and the neurons that synapse with these upper motor neurons collect the information and move towards the or end in the muscles are called lower motor neurons. So these are the types of these are the two types of neurons seen in the pyramidal tract. Okay, the same is being shown here also. The crossed ones, they'll pass through the same side, and the uncrossed ones, they'll pass to the opposite side and move along with their 80% counterpart. Okay. So this much about the pyramidal tract, and they are mostly in coordination, or they mostly control the movements of skeletal muscles, and they are involved in control and coordination of the voluntary actions in our body, voluntary and skilled actions in our body. Is it clear? Then the next one, they are the extrapyramidal tracts. So extrapyramidal tracts, there are few extrapyramidal tracts, each of which are concerned with various movements. First one is medial longitudinal fasciculus, that helps in the coordination of reflex ocular movements and the integration of ocular and neck movements. What do you mean by reflex?
Reflex is sort of sudden response to an extremely sudden response to a stimulus.
Okay.
The in order for it to take place, it does not necessarily interact with the brain like the afferent
Exactly.
signal.
Yes. The most of the reflexes are under the control of the spinal cord. Most of the reflexes. And this reflex, it is a sudden, uncontrolled, and involuntary response to a stimulus. It is a sudden stimulus, I mean, a sudden response. It is uncontrolled. We can't control the movement, and it is involuntary. It's not under our control. Even though the muscles, the skeletal muscles, are under our control, we say that skeletal muscles are voluntary and we have the complete control on the movement of those muscles. Even though we say that, when it comes to a reflex action, even though it is a skeletal muscle, at that time, at that point, we'll lose the what voluntary activity, or we lose the control, and it will act completely in the involuntary pattern. Okay, so that is a reflex. Reflex is the sudden, uncontrolled, and involuntary response to a stimulus. So here, medial longitudinal fasciculus, it helps in the coordination of reflex ocular movements, that is movements related to eye, like blinking reflexes or whatever, and the integration of ocular and neck movements. So when we feel like something is going to hit our eye, there will be a reflex action. There will be two reflex actions. One is closing of the eye and dodging or moving our head or neck portion from that particular stimulus, right? That is being controlled by medial longitudinal fasciculus. Then comes anterior and lateral vestibulospinal tract. It is the adjustment of position of head and body during angular and linear acceleration, which is concerned with muscle tone and posture from vestibular apparatus and cerebellum. So the term itself indicates vestibulospinal tract. Vestibulo means it is something related to the vestibular apparatus seen inside our ear. And you know what are the parts of vestibular apparatus?
Vestibular apparatus.
Yes, inside the ear.
You mean the middle ear?
No,
No, no, I mean
inner
the
ear.
inner ear.
Yes,
Cochlea.
concerned with no, cochlea is concerned with hearing because
Oh,
the
you mean like bony labyrinth, the
yes,
vestibular and semicircular canals.
exactly semicircular canals. There are three semicircular canals, and then comes the vestibule, that is utricle and saccule. These structures, they form the vestibular apparatus, and they help in the movement, or they help in the control of our posture related to movements of head, or related to our body movements. Okay, so when our head gets tilted, or when we are walking through a slopey area or a slope, like a slope or ramp or something like that, we'll be highly concerned, or will be highly in a controlled manner. The movement of ours will be very slow, and will be very concerned about the movement. And at that time, if suddenly we feel like falling and our head will move in a particular direction, at that time the vestibular apparatus will capture that movement, and accordingly will send information to the brain to control our postural muscles accordingly. Okay, and that adjustment of our posture from the information received from vestibular apparatus is mainly controlled by the anterior and lateral vestibulospinal tract. Okay, so it
Okay.
helps in the adjustment of our position of head and body, both head as well as body, by receiving the information from vestibular apparatus and cerebellum. Then next comes reticulospinal tract, control of movements and maintenance of muscle tone, respiration, and diameter of muscles. Diameter of blood vessels. Okay. And what do you mean by muscle tone?
Tone is the resistance of the muscle when it is passively contracted.
Okay. And what is the
No, like when you
importance?
passively, when the muscle is made. How do I put this? When you passively make the muscle movement, right?
Mm,
The
okay.
resistance encountered.
Okay. And what is the importance of muscle tone?
It generally indicates the like if there's a good muscle tone, then the muscle is functioning properly. Uh,
Exactly. That is, even when the muscles are under rest, there will be some sort of contractions inside the muscles, especially the muscles that are concerned with posture. Okay,
hmm.
and that resistance inside the muscles, that helps to
Yeah,
maintain.
passive contraction of muscle.
Exactly, that helps to maintain that particular posture or whatever it is. It is called muscle tone, and the importance is it helps in the maintenance of our body movements, control and maintenance of our body movements. If the muscle tone is increased, the muscles will become rigid, and it will lead to rigidity. And if that is called hypertonia, and the other one is hypotonia, which leads to flaccidity of the muscles. That is, the muscles will not be stiff, they'll be very flaccid. Anyway,
Hmm.
then next comes the tectospinal tract, responsible for the movement of head in response to visual and auditory stimuli. Okay, they are responsible for visual and auditory stimuli, or they give responses, or our body or head will move according to the information received from visual or auditory sensations. Then rubrospinal tract exhibits facilitatory influence upon the flexor muscle tone. That is, it exhibits a stimulatory influence. Okay, facilitation or facilitatory means stimulatory influence upon the flexor muscle tone during flexion. The flexor muscles, all those activities, the flexion activities, everything will be stimulated, and that movements are being controlled by the tectospinal tract. And last one is Olivo-spinal tract, which is believed to be involved in reflex movements arising from proprioceptors. Proprioceptors means those receptors that control our body posture and helps in the maintenance of body posture. So olivospinal tract is believed to be involved in reflex movements arising from proprioceptors. Just for example, have you heard of one thing, withdrawal reflex? Withdrawal reflex.
Withdrawal. Yeah,
Yes.
when you withdraw your limb
Yes,
from
exactly.
a
So
stimuli.
such reflex movements, the such reflex activities or reflex withdrawal reflex movements, especially arising from proprioceptors. Proprioceptors means something related or receptors that control our body posture. Just for example, if you are walking and walking barefoot, okay, and suddenly you step on a what small grids or something like that, okay, or small nails or anything, there will be a reflex action, that is you'll immediately lift your leg, lift your leg. That is a reflex action. That and when you lift your leg, your entire body weight will be on the other leg, which is uh, what position in the ground, okay, which is still on the ground. So the information from the proprioceptors will reach the brain, and that information will be acted upon, or they'll be translated and carried out by olivospinal tract. That helps in the reflex movement. That is, when we step on a particular thing, and reflexly we'll just uplift or move our leg or limb away from that, and that movement